to Convergence Research. I'm Melissa Noble, the Managing Director of the St. Mitchell Center for the Arts. And this is a program that the Mitchell Center administrates and who our graduate assistant curates. You'll hear a little bit from her later. And it's a partnership with the Blaffer Art Museum, which we are so fortunate to have. The Mitchell Center supports programs like this for graduate students and undergraduate students, as well as faculty. We bring visiting artists to the campus, and we just generally try to be involved with the College of the Arts as much as possible. And I'm going to introduce Kathy Benjamin, who is our liaison in Blaffer for this program, among many other things. And thank you very much.
We're so thrilled that this has been a multi-year collaboration that's ongoing, that was originated by the Mitchell Center in Blaffer years ago, and it gives students such a wonderful opportunity, we feel, in the museum, such a wonderful opportunity to host the creative works of the students in partnership with Mitchell Center. So we also offer many other student opportunities. You're looking at one that the School of Art presents, the MFA, annual MFA exhibition. We're proud to have that on display as well through April 7th. And we have actually, the next few weeks, we're designating our weeks of student celebrations because we have so many programs. There is this, then tomorrow is an artist talk by the MFA artists. Then there is a kind of a program called, let's see, what is it called? Brush and Brunch that some Bauer undergraduate students are hosting here, which offers tours and food, and that's on Friday. And then next week, more happens. We have our Blaffer Art Museum Student Association Red Block Bash, which is an interdisciplinary art celebration. And then we have also our first Friday art tour. So we have a lot of opportunities to tour the exhibition, to see the art closely, and to really highlight some of the students' great achievements here. So thank you all for coming.
Jiwon's going to introduce the artist. She is the curator and graduate assistant.
Thank you everyone for coming. I didn't expect this audience this much, but I'm glad that you're all here. So tonight we have Daniel Zamora, a multidisciplinary artist whose voice is as compelling as his visual art. With a background from Texas A&M University and currently an MFA candidate at our university, Daniel's work navigates the spaces between storytelling, sound art, and visual mediums. Please welcome Daniel and prepare to be moved by the unique vocal and artistic journey that Daniel brings to the stage. Thank you.
Tonight's first story is called The Fox. Centuries ago, a young fox decided to make a pilgrimage to ask a formidable Buddhist teacher a very important question. He set out from his home, and the journey took months and months. Along the way, he met many creatures, several other humans, many animals, and even a few demons and spirits. Finally, along the way, while he arrived at the temple, he asked to hold audience with the abbot and was guided to a small dark temple where the old teacher sat. "Teacher," he exclaimed, bowing deeply, "I've traveled from far away to ask you a very, very important question. Where can I find the truth?" The teacher sat upright, leaned forward, and lovingly said, "The truth? Well, it just moved." We just want you to be happy. The next story is called The Secret Eternity. So I was very young when I started playing with this idea of time and a kind of secret eternity. My childhood home was cozy and it was bright, and in its walls and sheltering space there were countless moments of wonder and daydreaming. Our dining room was pearl gray. It had these floor-to-ceiling windows, a sparkly chandelier, and, my favorite thing, a great mirrored wall. When I was little, I would sneak away, and I would stare at myself for what seemed like hours. There were stories in there, I would marvel. I couldn't wait to find out what they were, and so I started to pay attention. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, my parents had a birthday party for one of their friends, and we all gathered around the enormous dining room table. There were presents and cakes and candles, and pretty soon the celebrant began making a speech about what it was like to be their new age. And while I was listening, I caught my reflection in the mirror, and I thought, when I'm there, at that moment, at that age, it will feel just like this now. The there will really be this. Only it will be happening then. It felt as though I had just discovered something. What does it say about us? What does it say about time? And so I kept paying attention. A couple of years later, my mom took us on a field trip to a Vietnam War memorial. Years and years ago, she had lost her handsome young brother to the war, and she wanted to see his name on the wall. After searching and searching, we found his name. I never met my uncle. To my surprise, my mother burst into tears, a wave of sadness washing over her. And I understood that theirs could be here's, that things could feel as though they're happening right now, even if they happened a long time ago. What did this say about us? What did this say about time? Or now? And so, I kept paying attention. And I kept paying attention. Then it was my grandmother's 75th birthday, and the entire family gathered to celebrate. The house was filled with friends and relatives, and I wandered into my grandmother's bedroom, where my mom and aunt were helping her get ready. Grandma was having her makeup applied, and my mom was sitting on the bed. They were talking, and they were laughing, and I loved their stories. Part of me wished it would never end. "Okay, Mom," my aunt finally said, putting the makeup brush down. "You're all ready." My grandmother turned towards the mirror, and we all let out a soft, ooh. She was so beautiful, so elegant, so refined. My grandmother leaned towards the mirror and began weeping. "How did this happen?" she whispered. "How am I already here? How did I get so old?" I realized then, in that moment, for her, life had happened all at once. And I thought, what does it say about us? Or time? But then I thought, I think I know what this says about now. There's a secret eternity. And it's the seamless present. It's always alive, in all directions. It's just the background that changes. And I think, what does it say about us? Or time? Or now? This next story is called Two Baby Boys. Who doesn't like to laugh? Who doesn't like to laugh? Does anyone not like to laugh? So, the other day, I heard a joke. One morning, in a small city hospital, two women gave birth to baby boys, just minutes apart. In the nursery, the babies were placed beside each other. And while all the other newborns were wailing and crying and sleeping and, well, carrying on being babies, these two little boys just lay quietly, looking at each other. Nurses came and whisked the baby boys away. They were taken far into their own lives. Decades passed. Miraculously, in the same city, though in a hospital, these two baby boys, now old men, lay in the same room with the beds placed beside each other. Now the rest of the hospital was in the usual flurry of activity. People were being treated, doctors talking, family members chatting, people watching TV, and so on. Amidst all this activity, these two baby boys, now old men, lay in another peaceful silence. Once again, just looking at each other. Finally, one opened his mouth and spoke. "So," he said, "what did you think?" "So, what did you think?" So what do you think? The last story tonight is called Favorite Forest. So what I can say about being sick was that it was like being gone for a very long, long time. This is the life in which I've forgotten how to fall asleep, which is strange because being sick felt like I was lost in a deep dark dream, kind of like a terrible space travel. But I came back. People come back. And feelings come back. And it's good. When I first started getting better, I heard an old African proverb which said, "A falling tree makes more noise than a growing forest." And this struck me as so beautiful that something inside woke up. It was as though I had experienced this somewhere before. Somehow. It was like finding a picture of a long-lost friend and remembering how much you loved them. And so this feeling stayed, but I couldn't place the memory. And it waited there, in the wind. And so things kept coming back. Memories come back. These memories are like ancient magical waves that cross oceans. These waves reach the shore and repair the soul, like a spiritual kintsugi. And this mysterious feeling inspired by the proverb continued to float around me. Until one day, there it was, a memory of a memory. A surprise party for my 30th birthday. My partner had printed pictures from throughout my life and hung them from the ceiling, all at different lengths, from right to straight. They were everywhere, hanging, like suspended rain, or like notes from a song. And I remembered that looking at these pictures was like being at all these places at once. I'm skating down the driveway with my brothers. We're playing hide and seek in the orchard behind our yard. I'm driving with my mom and we're listening to music. I'm with my dad on the football field and he's talking to his coaches. I'm with my partner in Paris. And then we're in the tulip fields in Holland. And it's dancing. And it's birthdays. And it's Christmases. And it's on. And on. And on. Remembering this memory was like discovering a star. It was like 1,000 deadbolts unlocking. It was like chains dropping. Or like waking up all at once. It was like noise, stopping. And then I realized that being sick felt like being the falling tree from the proverb. Always falling and falling, dying in slow motion, continuously beginning to end. But then I looked deeper into the memory, and I realized I hadn't just been a falling tree. I had been, sure I was, but really, I had been part of this forest. A whole realm of nourishment. An entire living system of love. And that all along, it had been a safe place to fall. So there it was. A memory of a memory of memories. Like a jeweled mirror. Its reflection. My favorite forest. Thank you.
Hi everybody, Luca's gone. It's just me now. Thank you all so much for coming. What a great crowd, my gosh. This is awesome.
Everyone loves you, I guess.
It's great.
Yes. So we are going to start a Q&A session. So if you have any questions regarding his performance, amazing performance, you can just raise your hand and I will pick one by one. Anyone? Yes.
Fury in the back.
So how did the stories come about? You had 40 unique stories. How did you decide you were going to pick those stories? Where they come about?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Sure, so, I drew upon a few different sources, most of them lived experience. So this last piece that was performed is called Favorite Forest, and thankfully I'm one of the rare lucky few that has recovered from substance use disorder, and this was what it was like. So I spent years and years ill, and there's nothing like being healthy. It's amazing, right? And so this was really about the very first years of becoming a sober person and what that looked like. And it was really an interesting thing because I realized in many ways I was simultaneously building an identity, and I was learning who I was and I was learning who I was not. And so it was a very raw place. And when I heard that particular quote, so I was very not only physically, I was very concerned with what I was consuming, not just in terms of like nutrition or food, but what was I paying attention to? What were the things what type of music was I listening to? What kind of people was I keeping company with? What was in fact like nutritious and life affirming? And so I surrounded myself with a bunch of really wonderful people who were very well read, and a couple of them happened to like quotes, and that just and I lost a lot of memory just in that time. And so really everything is true. Like there wasn't a lot of recall, but slowly these things do come back. And I just had to give it time. But I remember when I heard that quote, something stirred in me when that happened. And I was like, this totally reminds me of something. Like there's something in there. And I waited for probably about 2 years when I was doing something like daily life, like washing the dishes or at the grocery store. And I was like, oh, it reminds me of the birthday party, And it was really profound, and so that was, how it was profound enough for me to go ahead and bring it to life in the form of a story. Two Baby Boys, I heard that joke, which was actually like a kind of a joke when I was maybe about 14 by a comedian, and I just thought it was like the funniest thing. And then when I was a little older, I thought there's something really creepy about that, And And I wanted to change up sort of the tone of some of these, and I thought, oh, what if Luca's kind of scary, you know? What if he tells something like a spooky story or something that's maybe isn't as quite as warm and fuzzy as the others? So there's that. I could go on, but I don't want to hog up the whole thing.
Okay.
Hi.
Do you consider the fox to be your spirit animal? Or if not, what characteristics of the fox were important to you to bring to this production?
Sure. You know, I thank you for the question. I'll tell you the origin story of Luca is that, so I've been a lay practitioner for Soto Zen Buddhism for some time now. And so the Houston Zen Center is an amazing place. And I was taking a class there. It was either a class or I was in conversation with one of our priests. And I heard the loving kindness meditation is one of my favorite meditations that we do. And I just get real nerdy about stuff. And I'd asked, you know, what's the story behind? Is there, you know, in process work that has to go on in recovery, you know, I just love the origin story of all kinds of things. And I asked, like, what's the origin story for this? And so basically, and just really quick in summary, is that the loving kindness meditation was created, as it's told, centuries ago, there was a Japanese priest that had a whole bunch of students, and he had sent them off into a remote forest to practice. And they made the trek out there. It was a really long, arduous thing, and then they arrived, and then they ran back to the teacher and said, it's impossible to practice there. It's like scary, like haunted, demons, spirits. And the teacher said, you know, wait right here. I'm going to equip you with one of the most powerful things imaginable. And when he had gotten back, he had written the loving kindness meditation, which is basically an invitation for all beings to exist beautifully together, you know, so that they wouldn't feel threatened or compromised or, any of these negative things. And I thought, wow, that's really fascinating. What if there was like, sort of like a demon spirit that, was like ready to, but then all of a sudden realized that there was a point of entry for them, that there was a chance for them too. And I thought, well, what about if this character is Luca? Luca is a spirit that was, perhaps demonic or not well in the past, and he's sort of transformed into a healed creature. And so using the voice of Luca, I've been able to, use this character as a vehicle from which to communicate these other things while supporting the theme of transformation and healing. So yeah, I'd say he's my spirit animal.
So I'm starting with an apology for not coming to the first one, but the two questions are these recurring stories, or every single time this installation happens, will you be telling new stories, and possibly what are some of the new stories going to be about?
No, so yeah, I have a whole bunch of stories, and at some point, it would be wonderful to present like a full, I'm not going to say like a 5-hour production, like that's a lot. But something maybe like along the lines of maybe like an hour and a half, like a documentary film length kind of a thing. Maybe 90 minutes. I don't want to, be a big ask. And plus, the other idea that I have is I would love to be, so I did the music for this. I did the sound engineering. I learned a couple of sound programs with the help of my advisor who's here. Thank you. And a whole bunch of other people. I did not do the videography. I had the ideas for the videography. One of my friends, Jiyoung Che, she's amazing. She helped with the film part while I just sort of and then can we have clouds here? And she's like, sure we can. She's amazing. So I would like to include musicians that are actually playing the music live. I think that would be really cool. And I'd also like to include other sound artists that maybe they can do the sound effect for thunder and stuff like that while still having images and stuff like that. And I invite, eventually I'd even entertain the idea of having Luca, if there's somebody that wants to share a story of healing or transformation or something powerful like that, if they would like Luca to tell the story, then I invite that type of participation as well. This is just a really sort of an introductory show for, a larger vision, which, I'm excited to expand upon.
Yeah, I was gonna ask exactly what is the history with Luca? Like you're saying how kind of where it originated from, but like, is this like the first time that you're using Luca in a public performance, or is there other times that you've done it? And then kind of answered about like future stuff, but
Sure.
specifically like how you and Luca, like what was the past, or if there was a past.
So yeah, so I did. This is only the second time that Luca's ever made a public appearance, outside of me rehearsing in my den. My neighbors probably think I'm bananas, you know. But I was fortunate enough to have a tiny slice, like a little mini showcase version of what you all saw. This is much closer to the vision than I had originally, than the first performance. So last summer, I believe, I had was it last summer? Yeah, it was last summer. I had a show at Bill Arning Exhibitions, which is in Montrose. And that was an amazing thing. I had a lot of friends come out to that one, but it was kind of, you know, that gallery was in the process of, was in its last days. The owner was, you know, completely relocating to his other gallery in Hudson Valley. And he was like, hey, if you want to have a show, then, you know, go for it. And I was like, oh, that would be great. He was like, all right, you got 2 weeks. And I think I had just bought Ableton like a month before, you know. I was like, whoa, but, you know, I desperately wanted to be part of like the swan song. So I was like, we're just going to make this happen. And then, you know, I would deeply regret not having done something, you know, than nothing. So I was glad that to have done that. But yeah, I'm thrilled that Convergence Research was able to, you know, extend this opportunity. Everybody's been very supportive and kind, so I'm in deep gratitude for that, for sure. Hopefully you all will see more of him. And, you know, and there's still, this is an ongoing, evolving sort of process. The phenomenon of storytelling has been a lifelong fascination for me in all the different ways that it can exist. So I welcome, you know, different ideas about how to bring that forward and how to collaborate.
Is it okay if I follow up?
Yeah.
Oh, so like you said that storytelling does that include like theater as well? Like was that like theater? Was that also like something that very much like, because you're saying like all forms of storytelling. So what are like some of your favorite forms of storytelling? And I was asking if that included theater.
Well, you know, there's something to be said. I think a little bit of an origin story might be like helpful here. So I was coming to consciousness in the, I was born in '73, and so when I was about like 8 years old, that was the early '80s, and this is right when I was coming to consciousness as a young gay kid, right? And right at this time was when the AIDS epidemic started unfolding into the world. All right, and so as I was realizing these things, at the same time, and I was very excited about liking boys. I was like, they're cute, you know. But I'm 8, you know, so with like the innocence of an 8-year-old kind of a thing. And so, you know, and I thought this is, but then at the same time, there were reports from, so one of the movie nights that we used to have when I was little was Welcome to 2020 with Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs, you know. These are like the old newscasters back in the day, and they started reporting on gay cancer and don't get bit by mosquitoes, and they're going to close off hospitals because people are dying. And so I thought, this is the life that I'm destined for. And I don't know exactly how I heard it, but I knew that my mom. I like to joke that my mom is so Catholic she's almost goth, you know. But not like in a preachy kind of way. She found her jam, you know. And you'd never know by meeting her. She just looks just really wonderful and elegant and beautiful. But like behind the scenes, there's like rosary action going on, you know. But I knew from an early age that, and I don't know exactly who told me or how I learned, but that all gay people went to hell forever, right? And so and remember, I'm a little kid, and so I thought before I go to hell forever, I'm going to die sick and afraid and alienated by everybody, and I will never have realized a fulfilling romantic love. I will be robbed of any kind of physical beauty. So these are really big themes even for an adult, right? Much less a little kid. And so I retreated deeply into the world of books, and so the characters in these books became as real to me as you guys, you know. And we traveled a lot when I was little, and I'd be like, it's okay, we can go anywhere, I'm taking all my friends, you know. And so this was life-saving for me, and I came to recognize the impact of stories and however they're told. Some of them theatric. I'm a big sucker for just like, old school campfire or just like over dinner telling a story. It doesn't have to have a lot of bravado, but I love this way of communicating because there's a lot to be said for when we listen to a story, we're listening to how the storyteller is experiencing the world and how they choose to communicate as well. So there's a lot, to be aware of and to pay attention to as these things, are presented to us in real time.
I think I saw someone before.
Hi, so what was your, tailoring off of that, your journey in deciding to go get an MFA in this program? How did you find your path there?
Oh, sure. Well, this is also, thank you, Marcus. So I went to A&M in 1992 is when I started out, and I was so excited to, and so, my mom and my aunts, just like I was saying about the makeup part, and stuff like that, so I come from like really stylish kind of voguey women, and they're just very fashion forward, like not snobs, but they can put a look together and just like own it. Y'all should see some of the pictures of my mom and aunt from the 70s, like they were killing it, right? And so we always had books like Vogue or Harper's Bazaar or any of these magazines kind of laying around, and so I was and I remember like looking at these pictures thinking like I could probably do that, and I started and I started taking pictures of my high school friends. I mean, thankfully, I was kind of like the weird kind of semi-punk kind of like, I listened to the Smiths and all this other kind of stuff, like semi-punk rock kid, and I had a lot of creative friends, and they'd be like, let's do a photo shoot, and they're like, sure, and so I'd like pile black eyeshadow on everybody, and then we'd do all this like really, really fun stuff. And eventually I got into portrait work. When I did get to school, I started taking photography, and I did a lot of really cool stuff. Eventually that led into one of my photography professors. Her name is Susan Kirchman. She's amazing. She pulled me into her office and she said, so I have an opportunity to present, I can select a student out of all my classes to be presented at the MFA in Dallas. And I picked one of your portraits, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a life, for me in this, and remember, this is like, it sounds archaic, but there was no internet, like, back when I was growing up, so I didn't have access to all, like, oh, and then you can do this, and then there's this, and look at all these role models, and all this stuff happens all over the world. So it was a different time. But a week later, she pulled me back in her office and said, and she looked really angry, which was very unlike her. She said, so your picture was basically vetoed. The dean saw it and said, this isn't representative of A&M, it's too homoerotic. And then so I was instantly like killed and like back to the bar, and stuff. And I was like, so all the hope that I'd had, and I, like a teeny tiny path was sort of seemed to be unfolding for me, and that was sort of gone. And then I eventually did become a national makeup artist for the Estee Lauder Corporation, so play with your mom's makeup, and that led to a whole bunch of other things. And then, and so I'd done artsy stuff, here and there. And funny, a few years back, I came to a thesis exhibition here, and one of my friends was, he's very active in the art world. His name is Doug Welsh. I'd come with another friend of mine named Mark, and he was like, you guys produce like a lot of work, like. It would totally make sense for you to have an MFA, and I was like, oh, that's really nice of you to say, but I didn't really sit, I didn't really take it seriously but something landed somewhere, and I was like, that would be really cool, like I could really see something like that happening. So I was very appreciative of the fact that, just that one sentence changed the trajectory of, what I happened to be doing at that time. So I put my portfolio together, and here we are. Y'all are meeting my fox. It's great.
How has exploring your voice given you a new sense of calm in the work you've been doing here with this, but also in the last couple of years with work?
Let's see. What's great, thank you, Ryan, is that it's wonderful to recount. The stories that I'm drawing from are some of my favorite memories. So, as I get older, it's really wonderful to sort of dive deep into this like treasure trove of memories that are very meaningful for me because they all have a particular story, And what's nice though is now that there's sort of been a foundation established that I've become more sure about the way that I can present things. I'm looking forward to sort of expanding. I'd like to. There's a lot of really funny stories that I have, and I'd like to do something that is maybe like hilarious. That would be really, really fun. So and also I'd like to be braver and truer to myself. I think that it was really important to realize just what a crazy time it was to be a kid back then. hardcore Gen X. I mean, that was like the whole reason that I started drinking as a little kid, because I was so scared. It wasn't like, oh my God, at 6th period, I just need a martini to take the edge off. Like, it wasn't like that, right? It was like, oh my gosh. Like, so my parents' best friends had restaurants in Corpus Christi where I grew up, and they also had a lake house, and the grown-ups would all go to the lake house, and they would leave the kids. They had kids our age. They would leave us with their little Mexican nanny in her room, and she'd be like, todo está bien, which means, is everything okay? She never left her room. She's like, and we'd be like, yes. And they had like a restaurant-style bar in their house, and we were just like, woo, yeah, we're grown-ups. And we were just being silly little kids, but we were making real drinks. But I realized then that I wasn't afraid anymore, and it was like miraculous. I was like, oh my gosh, when I do this, like, I'm not burdened with the weight of the entire world, So I came to equate like alcohol with relief, or like it had a medicinal property, And there's so many of us that it happened for like that, And it's nice to be able to sort of own my place in that whole era.
Okay, does anyone have?
Maybe one more?
Well, okay.
Thanks so much for this. I loved it.
Thank you.
And I was curious about your gestural work as you were talking. It felt so specific and so like stylized. And I was just curious about how you're coming up with the movements of your body and your arms and your hands throughout.
Yeah, so you all, thank you very much. I wore so this is and I'm kind of glad my sensei didn't make it, because she'd be like, that's not how you treat a rakusu. So this is my rakusu, and this is a Japanese prayer robe, okay? And, we wear this over here, and I have my Dharma sister, a couple of Dharma siblings in the audience. And so we wear this like this, right? And we make sure this is folded down. This takes about 1.5 years to make. Every single stitch is an intention. And so I was, and I asked our teacher, like, would it be okay if I wore my rakusu? Because I didn't want to be disrespectful. And she said, absolutely. So I was like, yes, I'm taking it. So a lot of these things were taken from some of the postures that we do over at the Zen Center. And then some other times I was just kind of winging it. Remember I was practicing in my den, and I had like pulled the mirror up against the window, and I wanted it to have, I didn't want to be super still, but I didn't want to take away from the visuals of the little film either. And so I'm still at full transparency. I'm still working on that particular part. So there's a choreography teacher in the midst. Then, well, But thank you. That's a great question. Thank you. And I think that was the last question. So is that right?
Yes, I
Okay.
have a question.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So I feel like storytelling is your main medium of art. Is there any other things that you usually perform or present as an art to the public?
No, this is the only performance that I've done. I mean, in terms of like in the art space. I welcome. I wanted to create Luca with that exists in a big boundless world where he's really free to do anything. So this is really, I think, the beginning, like I said, of a much larger journey. And so we'll see like where Luca goes, and how he continues to share and things like that. I do produce visual art, which is and I'm a big believer that I don't do anything by myself. Like these memories were created with other people, and and I read other people's books, and it's another it's evidence of the phenomenon of interbeing, right? And it's the same with my visual art. So, and I'll be having a show at the end of April, I believe. So, yeah. So I welcome you all to that as well. But yeah, I do everything with the help of the people in my life. So thank you. Yeah, for sure. And I really just want to take this moment to thank each and every one of you all for coming tonight. It's just been a real pleasure to see you all here, and I'm in gratitude for you all welcoming Luca this evening. So thank you so much.